Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'm discussing the 11th overall entry into the Halloween movie franchise with the 2018 slasher Halloween, as directed by David Gordon Green. Halloween 2018 is now the third movie out of the overall franchise to date to bear the same name, but is itself a sequel to the original 1978 classic Halloween, as originally directed by John Carpenter. And so, if that wasn't itself confusing enough, this movie also opts to retcon every other sequel, reboot and resurgence in the entire franchise, but for the original, bringing us yet another soft reboot, if you like, of the franchise on its own accord, and indeed starting its own merry new trilogy of movies. Or, in the end, I suppose a quadrilogy, if you like, if you include the original. However, all told, the movie itself, albeit technically Halloween 2, is actually relatively straightforward all told, taking us right back to the series' origins with a more grounded plot, a more uncluttered and complicated storyline, pitting the series' original protagonist and antagonist, Laurie Strode and Michael Myers respectively, head to head one more time. Unlike the previous attempt to reset the series with Rob Zombie's 2007 remake, also with the same name, this entry is not actually a remake, but a continuation of the story, but giving us a kind of different version of Laurie Strode to that we had seen in yet another of the series' attempts to reboot, back in 1998 with Halloween H20, giving us an almost kind of sliding doors approach to the character, asking what if she had gone in this direction perhaps, instead of where we took her last time. Anywho, for this version of Halloween, the simple rule of thumb is, forget everything that you've seen previously in the franchise, apart from the events of the first movie. Poor old Michael, he's been rebooted more times than my PC. But, like the first movies in each of the other retrospective franchise reboots, Halloween H20, Rob Zombie's Halloween, and even, to some extent, Halloween 4, which brought in a new plotline of its own away from the original, first two movies, if you like, Halloween 2018 actually manages to bring yet another entry that's fresh, stylish and fun in its own way, while still maintaining links and paying homage to that 1978 Carpenter classic. After 40 years since Laurie was first attacked by Michael, we now catch up with her, with Jamie Lee Curtis once again reprising the iconic role, living life almost as a recluse, ever ready in full-on survival mode, and always on edge, awaiting Michael's inevitable return. The result of which has left her estranged from her own daughter, Karen Nelson, as played by Judy Greer, who has little time or respect for her, seeing her only 2 steps away from a psych ward. However, Karen's strained and embittered upbringing may not have been in vain when Myers, as played by James Jude Courtney and Nick Castle, escapes custody whilst being transferred. Yep, yet again, and indeed just in time for Halloween. Promptly proceeds to get himself back to Haddonfield for more bludgeoning Halloween fun. After getting back into the swing of things by terrorising the neighbourhood, he then sets his sights on Laurie and her family, only to find that this time they're not going to be caught unawares. So, I'm going to come clean and say that the first time I actually watched this, I couldn't quite get how and why Michael would pursue Laurie after all of those years if he hadn't any other connection to her than there had been in that first movie, which this version of Halloween makes a point of making known wasn't the fact that Michael was supposed to be Laurie's brother, an idea that was introduced in the original sequel and not in the original movie, and so was retconned going into this movie specifically. I personally liked the hook of there kind of being some kind of family ties. It made more sense given Michael's relentless and ongoing pursuit, but Upon reflection, the movie does make sense in this respect, given a number of events that do transpire. But mainly due to the fact that it's technically Laurie haunting Michael this time around almost, hunting him down rather than the other way around, which is certainly an interesting perspective. But in any event, there is still something more terrifying about a deranged killer with no motives at all. A completely blank and piercing expression. A total void. In that, I can certainly agree. I think as part of Laurie's kind of character arc, this is probably one of the more depressing that we've seen. Whether or not realistic or not, I'm not sure. People would react to such trauma in different ways. And given the various incarnations of Laurie we have had in the franchise, I would suppose it was a logical step to examine a more hardened, embittered and weary Laurie who, in trying to take control of the emotions surrounding the attack, prepared in full for another. Indeed, Laurie has now become the new Loomis of the franchise. But indeed more hard-hitting, depressing than perhaps we have seen in the main arm of the franchise to date. In the fact that before the attack, Laurie appeared to have such a bright future and be full of life, and to see that kind of stripped away in this installment and to learn where life kind of took her thereafter is probably one of the more terrifying and unsettling things about the movie. The movie does have a fantastically nostalgic approach, which even after all of this time, and given the other movies in the franchise that have all paid direct homage to that original, it was amazing just to see how inventive, to be fair, they were in this respect. It didn't feel tired or oversaturated, instead paying homage in some unexpected, whilst also, some unexpected ways, while also kind of buzzing with its own gruesome energy. I do love the way that it opts to open with the original's haunting pumpkin titles set to Carpenter's original Halloween theme. Even after watching each of the Halloween movies back to back, there was still something satisfyingly warming about returning to these roots that still manage to raise the hairs on the back of your neck. Certainly a testament to Carpenter's work that even after some 40 years, it would still have such an effect. We have here a more contemporary take on survival horror, a mix of psychological intrigue, tension and action, which it is fair to say I found to be an engrossing watch. More than managing to breathe new life into the franchise, even after the various settings, guises, rehashes, retcons, reboots this series has actually faced. The cold brutality of Michael is certainly realised and unleashed with a mix of implied and outwardly direct violence and gore. Some happening off-screen, some in absolute full view. But either way, there are some terrifyingly blunt and direct moments. And a dramatic sweeping scene of his pure, unrelenting desire to kill as he terrorises a neighbourhood in Haddonfield. The way the camera work is used to pull us through and into the homes as he just goes about his business without a care in the world. You just get that kind of spine-tingling feeling, the way the camera cleverly sets this up, that Michael is just simply back in his element. And that's a truly disturbing thought, which certainly builds quite the dark and kind of disconcerting atmosphere. It's a serious sequel that does a great job at recreating some of the nightmares of the original, whilst also reintroducing us to a series with such iconic characters, some of the franchise's most established, a couple of familiar faces, whilst also bringing us a bang and smack bang up to date with a couple of fresh new faces to really add that new dimension to the terror as it unfolds. Overall, this is a gritty, stylish and on-point continuation from the original 1978 movie Halloween, being a very worthy and engrossing sequel that does end up being quite fun throughout, full of nostalgia and everything else one might expect from a Halloween movie. Horny teens, Michael being transferred, an ill-advised Halloween party, and indeed, a local crackpot. But indeed, it's back to basics once again, No fancy tricks or treats, just pure brutality and a seamless execution that serves as a brilliantly gripping continuation of Laurie and Michael's story, with one perfectly satisfying crescendo. Jamie Lee Curtis is also fantastic in this. I do prefer Laurie Strode's character arc more in Halloween H20, I must admit, to this per se, but I certainly get the point that they were trying to make here, and it's more than a treat to see her return to the role that put her on the map. It's harrowing to think that Michael's attack affected her life in such a way, completely devastated and ruled everything she ever did thereafter. But then that in itself is actually part of this movie's horror. We still have a few unexpected surprises and a relatively decent pacing, which keeps things from going stale, and even after 40 years, the franchise still proves it can deliver some brilliantly gruesome Halloween treats. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk, and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.